Okay, we are recording right now.
I see it.
And we're going to do segment 1, which is going to be radio only, 3 minutes, starting in 3, 2, 1. Well, good morning, real estate fans. Alice Lema here with Pete Belcastro. We're both brokers at John L. Scott Real Estate. And we are here with another rendition of our weekly radio show. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about. So, Pete, tell me what's going on in your world.
Well, I'll tell you, Alice, you know, you have been, I got to give you credit. You said this a month ago, 6 weeks ago, right when all the shutdown, economic shutdown was started. And you said, but there's still so much demand, so much activity going on. I don't think this is going to affect real estate too much. And I gotta say, it's just shocking to me still. We're in mid-April, or the end of April really now, and how much real estate activity is actually taking place in these counties. There is a lot going on. I saw the biggest pending sale go this week, a $4.2 million property that went pending this week in Jackson County.
Wow.
So with interest rates the way they are in those low 3% range, that's mid-threes, it's still driving what is left of our economies. So what makes it so interesting today is that Brad Hicks from the Medford Jackson County Chamber, Alice, is going to join us in a little bit to talk about the economic fallout from all this. But it's certainly, at least in real estate, it has continued a pretty darn good pace. And we've got some numbers to share with you to show that what's actually happening.
Well, and some of the economic predictions are that if there is a recession, it will not affect housing very much, and that housing may even be the engine that brings us back out. But that's why we have Brad Hicks on the show today, so we can talk about some of that, so we can talk about what's happening with our local businesses. We have some folks that have lost their jobs. We have some businesses in peril. We have some businesses that are flourishing. And he's here from the Medford Chamber to help us talk about that and bring us up to speed.
So in any kind of a crisis that you have, let's face it, there are winners and losers in all these types of things. And you're absolutely right. The hardships and businesses and people is horrible. But within those things, there's always opportunities that are out there. And look at the I guess, the businesses that are flourishing during this time and those that are hurting. And so it's across the board. And I can't wait to hear what Brad's got to say about that, because it just affects what the future of real estate is going to be in this earth. You know, if we don't have jobs, Alice, we don't sell with real estate, right?
Well, and Southern Oregon traditionally is a little weak in that department. We don't have a bustling metropolis like San Jose or Portland or Seattle, but we do have our own, industries here. And hopefully there's, some ways that our locals can still get through this.
Yeah, and the market feels like we're in the winter. Because the people who are out there looking with all the new protocols that are going on around for agents and showing, look at how many people are out there. They're serious buyers, because the pending sales this week again are 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 8 days out there. And so we're really seeing a lot of activity, which is just so surprising because of all the craziness around us, Alice, and you see it all the time. You get cash buyers, they're still out there. People are still looking because our valley is still a great place. We have a lot of issues ahead, though, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yep, when we come back from this break, we will talk more, and Brad Hicks will be joining us, so stay tuned. We'll see you in just a minute.
Okay.
How was that timing?
That's pretty good.
Oh, good, because I forgot to turn it on my phone.
Oh.
So, Brad, this is why we tell our guest ahead of time. I'm still in training, and I'm sorry. It'll get better.
It takes practice, right?
Yeah, it does. So, okay, does everybody feel ready for segment 2?
Let's do.
Okay, this is segment 2. It's going to be 13 minutes and 30 seconds, and it's going to be starting in 3, 2, 1. Well, welcome back to the Real Estate Show. I'm Alice Lema here with Pete Belcastro. We're both brokers at John L. Scott Real Estate here in Southern Oregon. And today we are so lucky to have Brad Hicks from the Medford Chamber of Commerce here to talk to us about what's going on with the coronavirus and our local businesses. Welcome, Brad. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Don't say you're lucky yet. Let's wait and see.
Well, let's start with what's going on with you personally. How has this impacted you and your work and your family?
It's interesting. You become pretty resilient when you've spent 30 plus years between my work in the legislature and 27 years at the chamber. You're not necessarily bulletproof, but you do become pretty resilient. And so to me, some of the criticisms have been interesting when I've done interviews like this. All of the criticism has been consistent, and it's been for being too positive. So I'm going to just try to dump on your program today.
Oh, good.
And
Good.
Just
A
give
dose
you
of realism.
a bunch of negativity. So that's been kind of an interesting thing to notice. The other thing I would say, you asked, how it's affecting me personally. We work a lot at the chamber. We have, under normal circumstances, we've got a team of usually 11 or 12 professionals between chamber and Travel Medford. And we work a lot as it is. And I was reading an article, I think it was in Inc. a magazine the other day, how we are all really working more as a result of being at home. And that has certainly been the case in the Hicks household. Of course, I've got my day job at the chamber, and my wife and I are owners and partners of a couple of other businesses. So, sometimes you walk into your home office at dark, and you walk out and it's dark. And I said to my wife the other night, I was changing to sit down and watch a movie, and she kind of looked at me like, "You look pretty casual as it is." And I said, I got to get out of my 7 a.m. jammies and put my 7 p.m. jammies on.
You have dress jammies and casual jammies.
Yeah.
Hey, Brad, do you think we've never had anything like this that hit everybody, whether you're still at work and you're affected no matter what. Have the, obviously, travel that you're involved with and chamber, which is for businesses, everyone, has been knocked by this. And do you think it's going to change when we come out? Are we going to be the same, or are we going to be different the way we do business? And
that's a good question.
Yeah, Pete, I've got a couple of thoughts about that. You're right. And this sounds like a strange thing to be thankful for, but in a way, I'm thankful that this has impacted all of us across the board. We sort of live in an age, kind of I call it the gotcha generation, where everybody's looking to point a finger at somebody, and it's pretty unhealthy. And so I have just been thankful that we're all impacted in this thing. We're in it together for sure.
You mean equally? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not equally, but because it's certainly there will be people who will weather this better than others. There's no doubt about that. But everybody's been impacted, and I think it does get us as a society pulling on the same end of the rope.
Yeah.
And
really
that's refreshing, because 5 weeks ago, we weren't pulling on the same end of the rope. We all had our own ropes, and we were about ready to hang ourselves with them.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right about that. You're absolutely right. People have come together, whether it's the person at the gas station who's doing something, or the business owner, or anybody. We all have had an impact by this. And you're right, it has pulled us together in that sort of way. I never thought of it that way, but that's really true.
Yeah, and so that is a big part of what makes me hopeful for recovery. I've spent most of my adult life advocating for and caring for other people's businesses, and so it's kind of an innate thing. But even I find myself thinking a lot more about that, right? Like the littlest things. I'll see a post where somebody's maybe just said that, their restaurant is delivering lunch And I'm not a big social media fan under normal circumstances, but I have to live on there these days, and so I find myself liking and sharing and commenting and doing everything I can to push that little message about that person's lunch special out there.
Yeah.
So I hope that level of care and concern carries forward. We're going to need it if we're going to recover.
Yeah. Have you had to lay off any folks from your department?
We have, unfortunately, and I don't know if you want to get into that in this segment, but one of the things maybe we'll talk about, the Chamber's been a very active advocate. I'm on calls 2-3 days a week, maybe every day of the week at the federal level, trying to influence the original PPP package, or the CARES Act that we've all come to know that as. And we were successful arguing a lot of things into that CARES Act and some things out of the CARES Act. Successfully advocated for a second round of funding that the Senate voted on yesterday.
Yay.
So we'll get more into that. It's got to pass the House probably today. But all the while, 501c6 nonprofits, which that's how the Chamber is structured, have not been included in any relief packages. So it's an ironic time. I wrote a rather long post yesterday about that. Senator Ted Cruz wrote a letter kind of advocating for Chambers, saying, if this nation is going to pull through this thing, particularly as we go into recovery, we cannot go into it with local chambers of commerce marginalized, because we're out there on the front lines trying to help members keep their doors open, direct them to SBA lenders and PPP grants and unemployment insurance. In fact, this morning in our staff Zoom call, one of our staff members informed me that the state of Oregon Employment Office is directing people to our chamber website, because
that's great.
Yeah, it is. It's a compliment. Our Southern Oregon Strong landing page there has become very popular, but it just typifies, or it underlines, maybe is a better way to say it, it kind of underlines how important the services are that chambers, local chambers all around the country provide. And yet chambers are having to lay off their own staff because we're not part of the payroll protection program. So,
kind of ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nobody's immune to it. Nobody's immune to it. Let me ask you a question about tourism, because tourism brings in tons and tons of people who come to our valley, Brad, every year, and Alice and I meet tons of them as well, because they are people who buy houses here, they move here, they relocate here, they tell their friends about what they do here. And if 60% of the real estate sales in our valley come from out of the area, okay, I'm sorry, 40% come from out of the area here in those real estate sales.
Yeah.
To me, that's going to be a huge, huge impact on us, because look what's happening to our local tourism for this summer right now. I mean, Shakespeare's gone. I mean, everything is just like upside down. So how are you looking at that? What do you think about that? What's going to happen?
Well, first, sorry, because you did ask that as part of your previous question. I didn't get there. I was going to use as a segue how we're all in it together, but some folks are definitely, the hospitality industry is easily the most impacted.
Yeah.
And I'm going to back up a second and share something with you. We have, depending on what day you ask, we are either the largest or definitely one of the largest chambers in the state, generally right around 1,400 members. And it's hard for us to communicate with all of them, but we set out about 5 weeks ago when we all got forced home. I told our team, I said, you know what, our members need to know that somebody cares about them right now, and we're going to call them all. Yay. And so I think today we might finish the last 40 or 50 of those 1,400-ish calls. And so we're hearing a lot of stories, a lot of obviously challenged stories, but certainly inspirational stories too. But I say that, Pete, in particular to your question, it's given us a pretty strong indication that the hospitality industry is all but shut down. That some hoteliers are still having reasonable activity because they are lodging truck drivers and medical workers.
Right.
So I talked to one hotelier last week who said, believe it or not, kind of a knock on wood statement, but I think they had 70 people in their hotel that night. Now others are closed completely. So it is hit and miss depending on who you talk to, and that's true of industry across the board. I was just reading a report this morning. Now, this is not a local business, but they do have 2 restaurants here. Chipotle, on the other hand, just had their biggest quarter in their company's history. So, some companies were, to the point I think both of you made in the first segment, some companies are just organically poised to take advantage of situations, even if they didn't know they were going to be. When they, built their business, it's like, oh, wow, you wake up one day and suddenly you are ideally situated to deliver and sell curbside and all those sorts of things.
And then some businesses have adapted so quickly, they call it pivoting in business school, right? And some of them are finding some prosperity, but they had to really dig deep and turn things around in a very quick fashion.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And we've had to do it also. I commented last night in one of my calls. We're always one of my old board treasurers used to remind us of that, the book that said sacred cows make the best hamburgers. And so,
no offense to any vegetarians.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, now apparently all sorts of things make the best hamburgers.
Right. So we've just got like about 10 seconds left.
Yeah.
So hold that thought.
Sure.
Pete Belcastro, Alice Lema with Brad Hicks from the Medford Chamber. We'll be back in just a minute, so stay tuned. Sorry about that. I hated to do that. That was a great point.
No, it goes
so
fast.
let's jump right back into that as soon as we go again.
Let's talk a little real estate too here, just about the market as we go along. Okay, so we got to do a little bit of that.
Okay, do you want to do that next and then go back?
I can just give it just the last week, what happened the last 2 weeks.
Okay, that sounds good.
There.
Okay, so we're going to do segment 3.
We get Brad, I want your comment on this because it's amazing to me.
Yeah, I heard what you were saying earlier, and it's pretty remarkable. I would make another point, I guess, maybe before I kick it back to you about the tourism piece, because you were going down a path that I often talk about, and it's the important relationship between the tourism economy and everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
And then maybe that's a good segue to what you're talking about.
Okay.
If we don't have a tourism industry or tourism here, it's not going to bring people in. They're not going to buy property. They're not going to do that. And so that ripple effect is going to be real. It's going to be felt.
Yeah, it's huge.
Anyway, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so everybody feel ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, this is segment 3. It's 13 minutes and 30 seconds long. And we're going back in 3, 2, 1. Well, welcome back to the Real Estate Radio Show. Alice Lema here with Pete Belcastro, both brokers at John L. Scott, Southern Oregon. And we're here today interviewing Brad Hicks from the Medford Chamber. And we're also talking about what's going on in our local real estate market. So Pete, do you have some little tidbits from what's going on last week in our area?
Well, first of all, you've been really busy.
We have a lot of
Yeah.
people buying and selling, and we did not foresee that, but yes,
Yeah.
we do.
And Brad
That's
was telling
great.
us about, being all the optimism versus, kind of more reality figures. Well, I don't know what statistics tell us what the market is doing. So last week, Alice, okay, the week of April 12th to the 18th, and we've been in this thing now how long? 5 weeks, 6
5
weeks?
weeks. Mhm.
5 weeks. So last week, 46 new listings in Jackson County. That was down from 57 the week before. But if you go back into, middle of February, it's probably right around the average.
Mhm.
About between 40 and 60 generally every week, okay?
In a pandemic, people are
Yeah,
still
in a
moving.
pandemic.
Yeah.
Pending sales last week, there were 62 pending sales. That's up 11 from the week before. Okay.
Yeah. Who would have
Solds, this
thought?
was amazing. Last week we said we've seen the first signs the thing is going to hell, right? There were only 28 sold properties in Jackson County last week there were 62 again. That's an increase of almost 40. So there's a lot of activity.
Wow.
The median price is still at $333,000, and sellers last week got 99.22% of their final list price. So,
And see, it's inventory. We did not have a lot of inventory. Now that people are starting to list their house, the market's scooping it up.
there's more inventory coming on again. If serious buyers, so it just again, and Brad, this, the real estate market is a huge factor in Jackson County. I mean, when you think about agencies and in the construction world, the real estate is going to be the driver. We think is going to lead us out of this mess when we finally come back to whatever normal is going to be.
Yeah, well, you're both right, and if history is any indication, I've listened to the stockbrokers' recorded messages when you call them about past performance. But if past performance is any indication, you're exactly right. I mean, healthcare obviously is a real industry leader here as a segment. But real estate and construction, more often than not, when Southern Oregon sort of punches above its weight, if you will, economically, it's because real estate and construction are leading the way. But I wanted to link something from the last segment back to what you guys were just talking about. The chamber board, I think really wisely, I think it was visionary some 45 years ago when they decided to create what was then called the VCB. We called it VCB, not CVB, because we don't have a convention center. So CVBs tend to be more convention and visitor oriented. We're more visitor and convention oriented. But tourism was kind of the redheaded stepchild, if you will, of economic development back in those days. It was seen as sort of the kind of the fluff piece. But today we now know that tourism is the number one driver in our local, our state, and our national and international economies. So
Wow.
It really, I want to drive that home because people will say to us often, well, that doesn't really matter to me because I'm a real estate bro. Like if I'm talking about what the chamber does, for example, we are out recruiting tour bus operators to bring their tour buses here, or travel writers to come taste wine and eat food and go to Harry and David and do all these other things and then write articles and tell the world about it. And people will often say, well, like that doesn't matter to me because my customers are here. But back to the point that was made earlier, we are all in this together, and it does matter because most economic development occurrences somehow originate. You can almost trace them back to a visit almost every time.
Mm-hmm.
I drove through there when I was a kid. My grandparents used to send me Harry and David when I lived on the East Coast, whatever, right? So those visits and those that tourism promotion plays a huge role in driving all the segments of our economy because they are so connected. So to your point, somebody decides to move a company here, what are they going to do? They and their employees are going to buy a house or rent a house and establish a bank and do all the other things that, you know, the rest of us live here do too. So it's hugely important. I'm heartened to hear the news that you just shared about those numbers to, hey, even if it remains average, I'll take average. You know,
no, it's amazing that that's happening, and those are really good signs, I think, for us going forward. There's people come, and it's across the spectrum, Alice, more so than we've talked about. I mean, we're talking, you know, Brad, the biggest number one area in housing is that 250 to 350,000 range. That is, I mean, it's a seller's market there because the inventory is so low there.
Yeah.
When you get up above 500,000, our market totally changes to where the buyers are in control because there's 6, 7 months, 20 months of inventory when you get into the luxury market here. So we're seeing all that. But, you know, job relocation is, I think, isn't it, Alice, number 3 in the reason people sell? I mean, divorce, death, job relocation, those kind of things are right at the top of why people buy and sell. And there's more probably job relocation going on for all these different reasons than we even realize.
And right now in the middle of the pandemic, this is just a prediction. Wait till the stay-at-home order is lifted in California and Washington, because I already have, and so do a lot of other agents, people sneaking over the border, buying property for relocating their business, getting a house, getting a investment or something, because the price differences from there to here, you can do more with your money. But wait till those stay-at-home orders are lifted. I think we're going to have a deluge. I'm willing to be wrong, but I think if this trend that we have while the stay-at-home orders in California, Washington are in place, and they're very serious stay-at-home orders. You're not supposed to be out in another state shopping. And they are.
Yeah.
And they're going home and they're selling off their stuff and getting ready to come back.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I was just going to say, I had a friend of mine with an investment property in California tell me the other day that he was instructed that he couldn't visit his own property. And, you know, at some point, there are going to be some interesting, beyond the economics of the whole thing, the politics of it are going to be really interesting going forward. There's more than one genie to be put back in the bottle, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you think about that, you know, you sit down over a beer and you say, yeah, you know, I have a rental in California and they wouldn't let me go visit it. Okay, well, you know, who's got the next round? But there's interstate commerce issues involved in that story. There's, you know, there's some interesting things that normally we wouldn't tolerate as people, that, you know, we're all doing in an effort to save lives and stay healthy and get this economy back on track. So the future, going back to, I think that was also embedded in one of your early questions, you know, what the future and recovery is going to look like. It won't look like it did 5 weeks ago. I mean, I guess I have some predictions too, but it will be the new normal for sure.
And, you know, we have an election coming up next month, or primary, and there are two really big, interesting issues on the ballot. You know, the jail issue in Jackson County, the development of the West. What have I got? The West. What's it called? The park.
West Howard.
The West Howard Park.
Yeah, West Howard.
Park.
Yeah.
I mean, those are really two big things for us. And, you know, the timing is obviously not the best maybe for the jail, but I'm still hoping that economic-wise that the West Howard Park, that Medford residents will actually pass that, because I think that's wouldn't that be a nice opportunity for us to come out of this recovery as we come out and have that going forward for Jackson County would be, I think, a wonderful economic boost to us too.
Well, obviously I do too. I understand all the reasons that might make people think differently during a challenged time versus you know, what we would consider normal times. But but you're so right. Our community has needed both of those facilities for a very long time. It's not like somebody woke up, 5 or 6 weeks ago and said, "Wouldn't this be nice?" and "Wouldn't this be nice?" We have we've needed both of those facilities for a very long time, and I think I'm going to talk about the event sports pool aquatic center a little bit. In that case, it was so smartly,
Put
to use
together.
the term. Well, the pivot was, back in the day. I mean, the chamber's been looking at, and so has the city, and so has the county, and a lot of other groups, assessing the need for a purely convention-only space.
Right.
And this really rewrote that script when we realized that the convention or event business was not enough to, float the boat, so to speak. But what we do have is this real, we're lacking, I guess. I'm struggling for the word there, but we have this empty hole where there ought to be spaces for basketball courts and volleyball
Right.
courts, and
So
we need it.
what I hear you saying then is that instead of the convention business of bringing people here, like the conventions, you're bringing people here via the athletic, the sports things, the other kinds of things that still fill up the hotel rooms that we saw at US Cellular Park. So as far as that thing, that you're right, the convention center, I used to support that for a long time.
Yeah.
It's gone. And you're right. This is a whole new script to that, to bring people here. If that's the ultimate goal, we don't really care if they come to a convention or they come to a sports event, right?
Oh, well, it sounds like you could have been listening into chamber board of directors meetings over the last 10 or 15 years, because, that's one of the reasons why we went all in, if you will, a number of years ago in increasing the transient lodging tax to buy the dirt, which turned into the US Cellular Sports Park. It would have been, and people did say this at the time, we don't need this Taj Mahal baseball field or the softball fields or whatever. And today, we have a dedicated person on our staff who primarily spends her time recruiting sports tournaments to come to Medford, and that's translated into hundreds of millions of dollars worth of revenue to Southern Oregon that wouldn't have been here. And so, back to your point, we decided a long time ago, we didn't care if conventionaires were no longer going to look like, they had their khaki pants and
we
their badge.
We didn't care if they wore badges, ties, or swimming trunks. We got to break them right here. I know, so we got to go.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be right back, so stay tuned. Okay, sorry about that. There's so much to talk about.
Okay.
We might actually have to have you back.
I really never thought of it, but that's really true, Brad. I never thought of it in that way. We just changed from the tie, the badges, to this, and it works. Oh God, I didn't even think of it that way. Okay.
No,
cool.
that was really our strategy, was to say, you just go, wait a minute, who cares if we can't get 500 people here for a Rotary convention? What if we had 500 people here for a softball tournament?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I just want to just bring up about water for a second, if I can. Get your comments and thoughts about that. Okay.
Sure.
Okay, so are we ready to do our last segment?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we're segment 4, 9 minutes long, and we're going back in 3, 2, 1. Well, welcome back to the Real Estate Radio Show. We are here with myself, Alice Lema, Pete Belcastro. We're both brokers at John L. Scott, Southern Oregon, and we have the good fortune to be interviewing Brad Hicks today of the Medford Chamber of Commerce. And boy, what an interesting conversation to be having during the coronavirus.
Well, we're 4 segments in, and you're still saying good fortune. So
yeah, and in fact, there's just so much to talk about. So
well, let's give kudos to the people of Jackson County in terms of their response to the governor's orders, under these orders. In the last, and we record our show during the week here, but in the last 6 days, we've only had one new case. And that is really, 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 really good.
Well, and I keep saying Southern Oregons don't really like being close to each other because it's why we live here. We like our space.
That's true too, isn't it? Well,
I think as someone who's been convening people to network and connect, I would just say, I think we do like to get together, maybe in limited doses.
In limited doses, right? But we're not big on getting into each other's stuff. It's why we live here.
Yeah. Remember last week when Rick Harris was with us, Alice, and he said, we used the wrong terms. We should call it physical distancing because we need more social, but we're getting more social interaction because of Zoom and things like this that we're doing. It's really interesting how that's changed. I've got get both of your comments because I tell Alice all the time that when we have a lot of water for the summer, everybody's happy. Farmers are happy, irrigators are happy, everybody, fish and wildlife are happy.
The river rafters, all those businesses on the river.
And this is not going to be a good year. And I just look at Talon Irrigation District, for example, here. Right now, their reservoirs are at 55% of the average at this time of year. Okay? Think of it, 55% of average at this time of the year in April. They're only at 44% capacity. They've delayed the start of irrigation season, which is normally April the 15th. They delayed it at least to May 1st. So we're in the midst of back where we were a few years ago. It's kind of been overlooked because of all the COVID-19 stuff. But boy, we're getting whacked all around us, you guys, by not only the shutdown, now water shortage, things like that. And there's no answer to any of that, but I'm just curious to what you guys think about that.
Yeah, Brad, what do you think? Because that's two things at once hitting our community. How is that going to affect our businesses?
Well, it's interesting you say two things at once, because if you think about it, 5 weeks ago, there were probably about 100 different important things all running parallel at the same time. People thinking about not just water, Pete, but what do we need when fires break out? We need water, right? Or we need water not to have a bad fire season. So those two very connected. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but we also we had a presidential election going on before this all.
That's right.
And which means we also had local races, statewide races, and of course national races. And this has all but suppressed fundraising, and which means we're not having to listen to political ads every night, all night long, which is refreshing. But nonetheless, kind of important who gets elected to the 2nd Congressional District to replace Greg Walden. Kind of important who gets elected president and who gets elected county commissioner and all those things. Taking it back to these two ballot measures, I understand the realities of where we are, but there's a part of me that says I hope when people are filling out their ballots, they can think about a year from now, than think about right now. To fill out that ballot positively requires thinking ahead to a time when we're back there cranking it out again, and people are buying and selling homes and doing all the things we want them to do and want to do ourselves, because I don't want to miss this opportunity, right? We need that jail. We need that sports center. I mean, think of it as the indoor equivalent of United States Cellular Sports Park. And again, not to keep harping on this, but we've got people that do nothing but spend their time recruiting softball, soccer, football. I mean, even I didn't even know what this was, because until my son made me watch the Harry Potter series, I didn't know what Quidditch I think that's what it's called.
It is. It's Quidditch. Yeah.
Yeah. There are actual leagues that, and they go around the country and they compete and they play. I mean, our person in our office, Angela, was trying to recruit a Quidditch.
Oh, that would be so awesome.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know how they're going to take flight, but they do it. I've seen videos. They actually don't fly, but
They stay on the ground.
yeah, they stay on the ground. But
For
the
now.
point is, so not only are we promoting a healthy lifestyle, and who doesn't want Southern Oregon to be thought of as the amateur sports capital of the state of Oregon? There's no reason why we can't hold that position. That's the other reason why we started the Know Your Role campaign. Not only did we want to be known for having the best facilities and the facilities that people wanted to play in, but we want to have kids, we want to have coaches, we want to have parents, we want to have umpires that are also known for having the best attitudes, right? Pete mentioned Joe Brett. When Joe Brett and I were growing up playing baseball, there were places you didn't want to go to, right? You didn't want to face the fans. You didn't want to face the parents. You didn't want to face their umpires because you knew you were gonna get the shaft one way or the other. We want Southern Oregon to be the place that everybody wants to come enjoy from a sporting standpoint, because our facilities are world class, our attitudes world class, and it takes facilities like is being proposed on the ballot to get there.
So the chamber. Oh, go ahead, Pete.
I would say we're almost out of time there. I'm just curious that because you talk to people upstate all the time now. Yeah. When do you think we're going to see some restrictions lifted? I think the governor is saying in rural areas of the state and other parts like us, we're not having these issues. Our hospitals are wonderful. They're equipped. They're ready. When do you see us beginning to come out of this thing, Brad? What are you hearing?
Well, interestingly enough, I have a 3:15 phone call scheduled with the governor and a few other folks. So I will know more at 3:20.
Yeah, today. Let us know. Would you let us know what she says?
Yeah.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Right. Well, here's what I can tell you. Having been on a call yesterday with one of her staff. Right now, they are essentially following the orders that came down from the White House.
Right.
Whether they'll stick to that or not, and the states have that's not a criticism, that just states have the flexibility to come up with their own plans.
Sure.
So we may actually craft a better plan than is sort of sitting out there right now. And then I hope this is encouraging. In fact, I got another email from City Manager Brian Shotun today. He and I are trying to get the city of Medford and Jackson County and the chamber together to come up with our proposal. Say, we've looked at the data, and the data tells us in Southern Oregon that this is what we look like. And let's not take a blanket statewide approach. Let's do a region by region approach, and let us do, fill in the blank, whatever that might be.
Well, and that's encouraging.
I hope you're right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and we're out of time, Brad. We're just going to have you back. This is Alice Lema, Pete Belcastro saying thanks for listening. The Real Estate Show. We'll catch you next week, folks. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Bye, Brad. Bye, Pete. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's all right. No, that's good.
There's so much to talk about. We'll definitely have to have you back on.
I'd be happy.
Well, I hope you're right about that, Brad, where she does it that way. That's what I've been reading about.
Yeah.
It's not a blanket approach. It's not. I mean, I agree with that, but geez.
Well,
walk into the Grange. Do you know the Grange Co-op had one of their biggest weekends they've ever had in their history last weekend?
Yeah. Yeah.
They were swamped.
It is nuts. I mentioned Chipotle just because it was one I had recently read about, but there are a number of those stories. I was talking to the regional director for all the Walmart stores in Southern Oregon.
Uh-huh.
And I was telling him that my son had been laid off from his job at Red Robin. And I said, do you hire 17-year-olds? And he said, well, not normally, but he said, you send them to me and I'll hire him. And they're literally Fred Meyer, Walmart, Winco,
Right.
Food for Less. They're literally hiring people on the spot.
Right. Yep.
You walk in and you fog a mirror and they say,
See, and then your essential services, and that's how you get through this, right?
yeah,
We'll have to talk about that on our next time we get you, Brad.
That's really cool. Well, we'll see what happens.
Well, and keeping those people providing essential services safe. This has been my big fear. I think we've proven that we can stay safe by, staying physically distanced from one another. But my big gut fear has been what happens when a bunch of grocery workers and truck drivers and medical workers start saying, hey, you're putting me in jeopardy and I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going home.
Yeah. Then we're starting to hear some rumblings, aren't we, out in the nation?
Well, hopefully we'll have protective gear for them. If that big fear will go away, hopefully. But we'll see. So, okay, I got to roll. All right, you guys.
Yeah. All right, you guys.
All right, thank you so much.
All right,
take care.
We'll send you a link. You can post it, and it'll be airing Saturday at Radio 880 AM.
Good. We will put it on our Southern Oregon Strong website and our Facebook group.
Yep, and I'll come join the chamber because I'm not a member.
Hey, there you go.
Yep.
We'll
Thank
take
you.
it.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, Pete. Bye.
Hey, Alice.
Yeah.
Okay.